teammates. Alright, hey y'all, welcome to the 5th episode of Season 1. Today's episode is going to be a little different since the past two have been kind of heavy and dark, so I thought I'd like to lighten things up just a little bit today. Now, the title of this episode is a fairy tale, and I know that seems like a child's story, but not this fairy tale, even though I am toning it down a bit this week. Many people in the spiritual community work with the Fae. A lot of people leave them shiny gifts like coins or crystals. Others will tell you not to engage with fairies because they can bring trouble with them. Whichever side of the bait of fairies you are on, they are fascinating little creatures. So are they real? I personally believe they are. A few years ago, I'm 100% sure that I had an encounter with one. Now, I wasn't intoxicated or on the influence of any type of drug, but I would see this fairy mostly at night. I mentioned seeing one to a friend, and she told me that if I was doubting what I was seeing, I should leave out a gift for the fairy and see what happens. So one night before I went to bed, I designated a little spot on my dresser and left a shiny new dime and a few crystal chips, not ships, that I had. And even though I was kind of excited about the idea of a visit from the little guy, I soon went to sleep. When I opened my eyes the next morning, the first thing I did was go straight to my dresser. All the crystal chips were gone, but the dime was still laying there. I got down on my hands and knees and looked all over the floor just to make sure that they hadn't somehow gotten knocked off the top of my dresser, but they were nowhere to be seen. Maybe he or she didn't take the dime because it was too heavy, or maybe they were offended that I had left them something that was only worth 10 cents. I don't know. I've left gifts out several times over the past 2 years since then, but I've only had that one encounter with a fairy, and I saw him for the 3 nights in a row, and then he was gone. Maybe he served his purpose with me and moved on to someone else. During my online research, I found many references to fairy sightings near and around Chimney Rock in the mountains of North Carolina. Chimney Rock is a popular tourist attraction here in the South. There's the rock itself, but there's an entire village that surrounds it. There's lots of gift shops, restaurants, and other touristy type attractions. The rock itself is a 535 million year old monolith and has an elevation of 2,280 feet above sea level. You can take a hike to the top of this rock formation or take an elevator to nearly the top and then climb just 44 steps to get to the very top. From the top, you can see a 75-mile panoramic view of the Hickory Nut Gorge and Lake Lure. If you didn't know, Lake Lure is where the 1987 film Dirty Dancing was filmed. In fact, Kellerman's resort in the film was actually the old Chimney Rock Boys Camp. Okay, so what about the fairies of Chimney Rock? As far back as a 1939 newspaper article refers to ghostly tribe, which were also referred to as dancing fairies. The Cherokee says that this ghostly tribe ruled the cliffs and gorges around Chimney Rock. The legend says that at one time the Cherokee were afraid to pass through what is now known as the Hickory Nut Gorge. I have a hard time with that for some reason. But because they had seen spirits that they referred to as little people. Finally, the tribe's medicine man successfully passed through the area while a whirlwind hurled boulders and helped him pass by the tribe of little people. Now, this account was reported in 1939, but it had taken place many years before that. A few years after that took place with the Cherokee, in 1808, a group of people, including a Presbyterian minister who were working near Chimney Rock, observed fantastic creatures resembling humans wearing all white, moving about the side of the mountain. This continued for about an hour, and they also said that they saw a rainbow, even though there had been no rain or even any clouds. Science explained that away as just a mirage. In 1891, a professor in the area opened his front door to children, pleading for him to come with them because they had seen people floating around the side of the mountain. The professor thought it was a prank and then sent them on their way. A few minutes later, There was another knock at the door, but this time it wasn't the children. It was an elderly lady from the area. She too begged him to come and see the ghostly beings on the side of Chimney Rock. So the professor decided to accompany the woman to assure her there was nothing supernatural floating around the side of the mountain. But when he got there, he was shocked because he saw that what the woman had and those children had been seeing. There were dozens of bright magical beings flying around on the side of the mountain. They were wearing white gowns and resembled humans, but they were flying. The professor saw beings that appeared to be women, men, and children. More people started showing up to see these celestial-like beings. Later, people even referred to them as angels. I've never journeyed to the top of Chimney Rock, mostly because of my fear of heights, but I've been wanting to go back ever since reading the accounts of the magical beings that inhabit the area. If you're interested in visiting Chimney Rock yourself, it's located in the western part of the Blue Ridge Mountains of North Carolina, only about 18 miles southeast of Asheville. Chimney Rock isn't the only place that fairies have been spotted. Fairies are a worldwide known phenomenon. There's many stories out there of such encounters. Ireland is home to several stories of chance meetings with the tiny creatures. One such tale took place in the 1980s. A young man says that he was walking home one night when he heard a rustle in a row of hedges to his right. He figured it was a fox or badger out on a night hunt, but he dismissed that theory when the rustling sound followed his every step. He quickened his pace, but the rustle matched it. When the young man passed a gateway, the rustling sound moved to the other side of the road. His companion, as he called it, followed him for another half-mile. When the hedges on the side of the road rose to his height, it became more sparse, and there was more barbed wire than leaves. When the young man turned to look, there was a shape that was about 3 feet tall. This shape had a thick waist and broad shoulders. The young man ran the rest of the way home and collapsed when he came through his front door. His brother swears up and down that his hair was standing on end. Another tale from Ireland says that in the 1990s, another young man, but this man was from America, and his fiancée were traveling on a road that ran through some mountains. He spotted a white figure that he thought was a bag blowing around in the wind, but it was actually traveling up the mountain. And not just bouncing around like how a bag would that's caught in the wind. The young man soon noticed that the figure started jumping from tree to tree towards him and his fiancée. He says that the figure was about 2 or 3 feet tall, had a bluish chin, but that had no features like a human. They got the feeling that this creature didn't have good intentions, so they jumped back in the car and left the area. In 2010, a woman reported seeing 4 male and 2 female fairies walking through a field along a pathway towards her direction. She had other encounters with the fae, so she wasn't afraid. So after they passed each other, they exchanged greetings in Irish and went on their way. But when the last one, that was a female, got right past her, she turned and asked if she was so-and-so's granddaughter. When the woman replied that she was, the fairy smiled and said that she should visit sometime. That encounter was pretty cool, and I probably would definitely visit them for sure. In 2018, a survey concluded that 44% of the 1,602 British participants claimed to have seen fairies. One person says that she witnessed an all-night forest rave where 2 female fairies, a goblin, and what she described as a mudman, danced to tribal drums until sunrise. Another stated that she and a friend saw a large gray spot on the ground ahead of them that they thought was either a large dog or deer, but it morphed into a tree branch and then morphed again into 2 female figures. Both had flowing dresses and wings on their backs. Their laughter was described as sounding like a babbling brook. There are tons of fairy sighting videos on YouTube. Some are obviously unbelievable, but many more are very believable. Whether you choose to believe that the existence of fairies is true is up to you. And like they say, seeing is believing. Or to quote the Santa Claus movie, the 1994 film starring Tim Allen, seeing isn't believing, believing is seeing. If you'd like to see if you have fairies around you, you can always leave them a little offering. They like shiny objects, and if you feel that you've offended them in some way, a little bowl of milk and honey usually appeases them. Well, that's all I've got for today. Don't forget to check the Facebook page, or check out the Facebook page at facebook.com/3M podcast. And that's the number 3 and the letter M as in Mary podcast. I post updates and photos that I obviously can't show on the episodes. And if you have an episode suggestion, comments, or questions, shoot me an email at mysterymurdermagic@gmail.com. And don't forget, there's a K on the end of that magic. Have an awesome week.